We talk a lot about actors and directors, but rarely do we talk about people who write the stories. Even today, a lot of writers go uncredited and unheard of in Bollywood. And that's the big question we are addressing today. What does fair credit really mean in Bollywood? And why are our stories not connecting anymore? And to unpack this, we have with us Gajra Kottary, an award winning screenwriter who's been behind Indian television iconic shows like Astitwa and Balikavadu. She's been at the heart of the industry and she's here to tell us what really goes behind the scenes and give us some perspective. Welcome, Gajra.
Thank you, Lena. Pleasure to be talking to you.
Likewise. So let's just
Mm.
dive straight in. Can you tell us
Mm.
that what really a fair credit means to a writer? Is it just the name or is it something more?
It's a whole lot of things actually, Lena. It feels great to be actually seeing your name out there on a screen, whether it's a small screen or a big screen. But most importantly, it gets you industry recognition. And it also today has become a very, very important tool to judge, in terms of what your rights are as a writer. I mean, one can't stress enough on the fact that it's only when you have a credit out there that you have any rights at all as a writer. And that's what organizations like, there's a very interesting organization which has recently been formed called the Screenwriters Rights Association of India. That's
Yes.
SRI. So, I mean, whenever we attend the seminars, whenever we get involved in any discussions, the first thing that they tell you is that if you don't have a credit, it's very difficult for anyone to take up for you in terms of, the fact that you have to be done justice to by
Hmm.
producers and by directors. But if you don't have a credit that reflects that, on what basis are we going to fight for you? Even if some unfairness has happened or injustice has happened. So, from every point of view, the credit out there is very, very important. It's worth fighting for.
So you mentioned that the credit will give you certain rights. What are these
Yeah.
rights that you're talking about?
See, there is the usual rights that accrue to a writer in terms of their share, depending on how much writing they have done. Because usually on a film script, there are two or three writers, and if you talk of television or you talk of OTT series, there are a whole lot of writers. Sometimes there are 6 or 7 writers because it gets very compartmentalized in terms of concept, then story, then screenplay, then dialogue. So there are so many writers, and the fee which has been sort of decided in terms of budget, what are the writers going to be paid? That will be divided among the writers, and the
Okay.
ratioing happens depending on how senior you are, what you've negotiated, and also in terms of the credit that you get. There are many situations where, you are taken on for something, but your credit doesn't reflect that. So it's going to be very difficult for you to fight for your money, the due money,
Yeah.
which is, your right in a sense. So it's very important. It's very important for youngsters because that's how they will grow from point A to point B and further.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and for seniors too. For seniors too.
So, what I'm just trying to understand, because for our
Yeah.
viewers who don't have an idea about this, if
Mhm.
when you have a credit, you can access your rights. So that is why
Yes.
anytime you're working, you need to make sure you get the credit.
Yes, 100%. To complete what I was saying, basically, it's not just the money you get at one shot for the work that you've done. To talk about specifically the SRAI, and it's a copyright society which has come into being very recently. So, in very broad terms, every time your creation, something that you've been involved with or created completely by yourself, every time that is shown in any part of the world on any medium, you are supposed to get royalty. It's like your book. The number of copies sold will entitle you, every copy will give you a 10% or a 20%, depending on what you've negotiated with the publisher. That money has to come to you once a year. The auditing
Right.
happens. So the SRAI is also getting involved in trying to get the writers these rights, which in our country so far have not been given. It's a trend in most parts of the developed world, and it's what the Writers Guild fought for in America.
Hmm.
And it's time that we in India also sort of, get those rights, because it's a very insecure, it's a very arbitrary profession to be in. There are good phases and there are bad phases. But the simple logic is that, if I've made a super hit creation which is being shown all over the world, why should only the producers earn from it? Don't I, as a writer, have the right to have even a small portion of, fee, which accrues, because everyone else is making a profit out of it. So why not the writer, from whom this entire creation has started or originated? So the logic behind the SRAI is this, and therefore credit, credit, credit. It's very important.
All right. And since you've been in this industry for a long time and SRAI has just come up, have you
Hmm.
ever had an experience where you didn't get credit for something that you have written?
Well, when I started out, yes. I went to a producer. I was just going from producer to producer with a few of my stories. And the producer got back to me saying, no, the story has not been accepted by the channel. And those were, days of episodic series. So, and I used to watch his program. So you could imagine the sort of moment that I went through when I was actually tuning into his program, expecting a fresh new story, and I see my own story unfolding. And then the usual games of them avoiding your calls, etc., etc. And then, fortunately, I was working with Bhatt Saab at that time, that is Mr. Mahesh Bhatt. And he was very upset on my behalf. So he called up this other producer and said, this is no way to treat her, and by the way, she's working with me. So it did hit me at that time that I was just lucky that I happened to be working with Bhatt Saab, so there was someone to take up for me. But if I hadn't been working, I would have lost out on what was legitimately mine. So this has happened, but later on it became only better for me, because I think once you write a successful show, uh, the chances of other people messing with you are a little less.
Of course, your boundaries get clearer. And
Yes,
like you said,
but once, yeah,
the
you're
credit
aware of
also
the
helps.
it helps. Like how? I mean, I have to just underline it as many times as needed. It really helps.
So you said that Mahesh Bhatt helped you, get through that phase. But is it
Hmm.
really tough as a writer to speak up when your work changes or it is
Hmm.
taken away? We just spoke about your experience about it being taken away without any credit. But what about
Hmm.
your work, something that you have written, but it changes because of producers' demands or actors' demands? So is it tough to
Yeah.
speak up and uh, what is that like?
It is tough to speak up. It's not easy at all. Uh, Let me be devil's advocate for a bit. You see, what happens is that the whole process of writing is a very collaborative effort. And it's considered to be a very democratic process where, literally you have writers' rooms, you have people floating in and out, and you have the producer and the director who are taking an interest. Now, what really ends up happening, even during that initial process, is that a lot of ideas get thrown around.
Hmm.
And then there is a processing that happens, and you keep some and you throw some. So, what really happens at this very important stage is that the writers start getting very worried that मेरा कितना रखा है या कितना फेंका जाएगा या कितना change होगा. But they don't ask questions because they're very afraid. They're afraid of ruffling feathers at that point of time. Uh, my sort of, advice would be that at this stage, ask questions. Even if you have to get a negative answer, even if you have to get a difficult answer, it's very, very important not to just keep quiet and try and be this nice person who doesn't argue and doesn't fight back. Yes, I would say don't argue and don't fight back, but ask questions, record brainstorming discussions if need be, so you know exactly how things have changed, because ultimately the credit as well as I mean, jiska jo hoga, so of course a lot of favoritism happens. That's also a sad reality of the whole process. But keeping that aside, uh, no one is to say what was spoken and what was discussed and what finally appeared on screen. So you will need proof of that if you need to fight for your rights later on. And one thing about SWA, which is the Screenwriters Association,
Association. Yeah.
that they're very, very supportive. They even support you if you have signed an unfair contract, because there are certain rights that you have as a writer, which are, what should I say, above and beyond even what they've made you sign. Because the SWA understands that writers are sometimes put in a very uncomfortable spot. It's like, acha, if you're going to create problems, we'll take another writer. And, the whole ratio of being able to even get work in the first place, and versus the demand and supply is very, very skewed. There's much more supply and there is less demand, so that makes the position of the writer very weak, and therefore a lot of writers just end up signing very unfair contracts. But as I said, the SWA is very supportive, but I think the job of all writers should be to help them fight for you. It's
True.
very, very important, because it's like if you don't help yourself, that's very difficult for an organization to help you.
But in this whole chaos, does
Ye-
creativity ever get affected as a writer?
yes, it does all the time, because I mean, although I hate talking in terms of हमारे ज़माने में ये होता था, and it sounds terribly regressive in that sense, but one thing I must say is that even say around a decade and a half or 2 decades ago, there was a lot of respect for writers and there was a lot of conviction in what they wrote. The producer and the director tried their best to have that conviction, and therefore teamwork was happening. What is happening now is that there is everyone is, if I were to describe it in 2 words, there's this great thing to play safe in terms of writing. So what are we having? We are having sequels. अच्छा, वो फिल्म चल चुकी है तो इसलिए उसका सीक्वल भी चल जाएगा, या वो कहानी या वो ट्रैक काम किया है तो लेट्स मेक अनदर sort of a me too thing. But that is where the problem is lying. That is the reason why films are just flopping like ninepins. And even television, which I've spent so much time of my life writing television, but it's no longer as satisfying and as scintillating as what it used to be, say, even 5 years ago. So, the reason that stories are deteriorating is not because of lack of talent, but it is because everyone is trying to play safe. And in that process, they're doing what's already been done, which no one wants to see. And that's where the South is being original. You may or may not like what
Hmm.
movies they're churning out, but yes, you'll rarely find a movie and say कि यार ये तो देखी हुई है. You'll never
Hmm.
get that, you know.
Yeah.
So that's what we need to really review and look at once again.
Definitely. We're going to come to why the stories are not working well in Bollywood in some time. My one more question about the writers is, what do you
Hmm.
think should change for
Hmm.
writers to get fair credit and visibility? Like one or two things that you think is absolutely necessary, according to you.
I think somehow we've got to keep that passion alive, even though the circumstances around us, especially currently, are not very conducive. It's really a bad phase. But think original, think different, work really, really hard, and also be aware of your rights. Don't think you're alone. I think this whole thing of I'm the only one in this situation is what sometimes, it becomes what they describe as a self fulfilling prophecy. We end up isolating ourselves. Whereas if you are aware and very gently but politely, you communicate this to your producer and your director that you're very aware of what is happening, the chances of them taking away your credit or messing around with it is going to be far less. So be aware of your rights, but don't let the passion get blunted, is my two bits, literally. Yeah.
That's great. And now coming back to why the stories in Bollywood are not connecting anymore. You
Right.
said that they are too afraid. They're playing safe. Everyone is
Hmm.
going to that formulaic
Hmm.
strategy that okay, action mass चल रहा है तो ये बना देते हैं. So
Hmm.
is, is that the reason that it's just everyone's just playing safe?
100%. They're playing safe. In fact, I would say digital films, pure digital films are far more adventurous. The only thing is that their budgets are very limited, which also I think the more limited a budget is, the more pressure on the writer to sort of not rely on the gimmicks of large screen and lots of action, lots of period drama, lots of glamour, lot of glitz, etc. So it's pure script. It's the strength of your story. It's the strength of your scenes. It's the strength of your dialogues. That is something which needs to be sort of really upped in terms of the standard. And what's also sadly happening is, after all, writers are also human beings. So what ends up happening is that when there's because we are not strong enough, we are not the ones who have all the money to put into the film, and we therefore depend on other people, and therefore when those other people ask us to play safe, that is the time that we need to question ourselves. Because when we become part of that process, after all, even these films which have bombed like Nine Pins, they have also been written by certain people, and
Yeah.
those are not writers who are bad or who are lacking, but they've just succumbed to that pressure of playing safe. So there's just no other way but to push the limits of our creativity, because otherwise we'll just be, we'll be cribbing, we will be lamenting, we will be blaming others. No point, I feel.
True, because OTT when it started, it was all
Yeah.
original content and everyone was moving towards OTT. And now the case is also as such that theatrical releases, not a lot of people are showing up. OTT
Yeah.
is the new game. But
Hmm.
in the whole race, OTT also started doing what
Yes,
the
yes, I
theatrical
agree
films
with
are doing.
exactly, exactly. In fact, there've been so many examples of the platforms, OTT platforms, going for big names. And it is those projects which have actually performed worse than, because uh, it was just too blasé, okay, as long as we have so and so's son and so and so's daughter acting in the film, and it's a big production house. But then what is your script? What is your story? Are you saying something new? Are you saying it differently at least? That's not happening. So it's all there. We need to study it. We need to be gutsy enough, because unless we are adventurous, we won't even know where we are going wrong, we'll just keep going wrong. You know,
But then I
that's very
feel it's like a two-way street. Even producers who are ready to put in money, as a
yeah,
producer, I'm like, okay, no, but this is what has been working. So I will
yeah,
make sure that I'll put in money on such a script. Or even
yeah,
if he gets a fresh script, he will ask, like, change the script into this because this is what will get
yeah,
the tickets. But we
yes,
genuinely need to take the risk. For
yeah,
example, Sitare Zameen Par, Amir Khan has said that he's not going to be releasing the film OTT.
yes,
He
yeah,
wants the content
just
and the
the,
film to
yeah.
work just as is because he believes in the writing, he believes in the
uh,
story, he believes that it
uh,
will definitely connect to the audience.
right, absolutely right. And for that reason alone, I wish the film does well. Honestly, I haven't seen it. I'm going to see it tomorrow, but it's a very important cause to stand for. Yeah,
But it needs both people's writers, producers, cooperation. And do you think
it
actors
does.
are also saturated with the kind of roles they are doing? Even they want something more to their own characters. Do you think that
Yeah.
is also possible?
Yes, it is. It's happening. In fact, thankfully and happily, a lot of actors are slightly turning the corner. In terms of, earlier they would only want to know mere scenes kya hai. They
Hmm.
don't want to really get into whether it's a powerful enough story. They're very insecure about other actors getting more footage or getting more importance or getting more dramatic scenes. We've had lots of such examples. But unless they believe in the power of the complete story, the rounded product, and there is a feeling of, we are telling a good story and I am playing a part in it. If that is the healthy way of thinking, which is happening in OTT a lot more than it's happening in film, but films, the big stars are going to realize it too. I definitely think they will, because they're intelligent people, most of them. People started thinking that, I want a grandmother in law like this. So that was quite a journey. And we sort of plotted it for 6, 7 years. It lasted 8 years, 7.5 years. And we kept changing the pace, because that's something which is not in your hands for a television show. But we were very faithful to the graph as such. So it was a great achievement, which even a veteran like her would sometimes say that I have never played in my whatever 30, 40 years a character where I've got to explore the entire graph. Now, that is something, in fact, it's easier. If you're doing an 8 episoder, it's far easier to plot the entire graph and to space it out over those 8 episodes. But I find it's very jerky in a lot of episodes.
Hmm.
So that again is something, like it's the writers who need to work more. You can't get complacent. You just can't.
True.
And if you have a very strong story and you've worked hard enough, you can politely, of course, convince the platforms. The platforms are also made up of people like you and me. They are not, they don't have horns on their heads. As sometimes, there's this whole uh, thing which is often talked about that, oh, they made us change and oh, they are to blame. No, you need to convince them and you need to be convinced yourself of the character and the graph that you've created. आप खुद कन्विंस होंगे तभी आप दूसरे को कर पाएंगे.
True. Absolutely true. And coming to the end of our segment, what would be
Yeah.
one thing that you would like to tell aspiring writers?
Just organize yourself to sort of be in for the long haul. It's right now is a very, very tough phase for the industry, but the good times will come again. I think the biggest and most challenging thing for a writer is during these fallow periods, when not too much is happening concretely. I think it is the best time to practice and hone your craft. So just turn this time of adversity, which is definitely happening right now into a time where you just hone your craft, learn your skills, polish your grammar, and just think afresh. Keep your stuff ready because good times are going to come. That's my bit of advice. I am a very optimistic person. I've seen some bad times also, but it's so important to keep afloat and keep your spirits high.
True, absolutely true. Thank you so much, Gajra, for giving us your insights and perspective. I'm sure our viewers had a lot to learn from. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lena. It's been a pleasure.
So that was our conversation with Gajra Kottary. And if there's one thing that stood out, it's this: credit isn't a favor, it's the foundation of a writer's career. From platforms like SWA and SRAI to setting boundaries in the room, Gajra reminded us that real change starts when writers speak up and when the industry listens. She called on young writers to resist the pressure of formulas, to own their ideas, and to stop apologizing for wanting fair credit. Because if we want stories that truly connect, we have to first respect the people who create them. What did you think of this podcast? Do let us know in the comment section. This is Lena signing off. Keep watching Famous TV for more such content.